Hi everyone, and welcome to week 4 of my Weeknotes. I can't believe that it's been a month already of writing these. Time flies way quicker even during COVID and lockdown than I think I'd like it to. But here we go, we're at week 4. So we're going to talk about the things that have happened this week following the format of the last 3 weeks. But if you are watching this and you like it, perhaps give the video a like and a thumbs up. And if you are enjoying this content, you can also subscribe too. But that's all I'm going to say about that, so let's dive into the content. So the first thing I've realised this week is the art of timeboxing. So just saying, shall we timebox this, isn't really the full picture of what's needed, in my view, for a successful outcome. I've seen many different sessions, like over years of career work, and only a couple of times have I seen a time-boxed based exercise done with the intended outcome of what was needed. And I think that's really interesting. I've recognised this week that at the heart of the practice of time-boxing is actually discipline. And self-discipline in a remote-only world is really hard. We used to have office closing times, dinners with friends, school runs to do, which kind of enforced this discipline onto us, which in this remote world where sort of what is work and what is not work, like it's all meshed together, is really hard to replicate. I believe that all individuals within a team must possess an amount of self-discipline, number one, and be willing to spend that self-discipline on the task or discussion at the time of the timeboxing session in order for it to be successful. Somebody can be very self-disciplined and just not want to be self-disciplined during that time, and that's absolutely fine. There are very valid reasons why you might not want to spend that tangible amount of energy you have to be self-disciplined on that specific task. It's COVID, it's lockdown, we're all really kind of at the bottom of our barrels for that sort of stuff, so that's absolutely fine. But I believe that you need those two things, at least, in order for this to be successful. I think there also needs to be a recognisable amount of value to completing the time box. So, for example, at the end of 5 minutes, we will have finished this small section, whatever that section might be. And then after 15 minutes, we might have finished a larger section, or at a more kind of larger level, at the end of the week we would have advanced ourselves against our weekly goal, or at the end of a 2-week sprint we might have advanced ourselves against a sprint goal, and you can keep it going, right? At the end of a quarter we would have executed against our quarterly OKRs, and at the end of the year we will have advanced our yearly goals. Like, timeboxing doesn't necessarily have to be just those couple of minutes or couple of hours in front of us. Everything in life does have a time element to it, unless I'm aware of some way to like press pause on life. I'm pretty sure that's not been invented yet. So timeboxing does exist because time itself will continue going, and it's just we choose to do blocks of things within that. It's worth recognising as well that timeboxing doesn't necessarily have to just be in the professional sense. You could, for example, have a timeboxing around the amount of exercise you do in the morning before work, so that you're able to shower and get dressed and get ready for work in the morning. You might have the amount of timeboxing that you're willing to spend on a commute in order to get somewhere, like a festival or an event or work or something. So that's what I learned about timeboxing. I don't know whether that's a ramble or whether that's useful to folks, but it kind of felt useful to me this week, so I thought I'd share that with people. The next is to sit or to stand. That is the question. So I now have a standing desk, or a sit-stand hydraulic desk, and it's been really great. I'm really lucky because I managed to convince my housemate, who is also my landlord and one of my best friends, to give up some of our communal space in the open living area that we have here, to create a bit of a second office feel. I ended up collecting my client laptop this week from central London, so I had to travel in, and it ended up being a really beefy MacBook Pro, which was a really nice surprise. I'm going to really enjoy using that over the next couple of weeks. And so I'm currently shuttling between my current setup here and the standing desk setup kind of elsewhere in this place. And it's a bit like having a commute all over again. It only takes a couple of seconds, it's not anything major, but it's like, oh, gotta go to the other place now, and you have to get up and leave, and you know, you're standing up for a couple of hours, and you're like, oh, better go sit down, and you come over in here. And it's actually really good. I really enjoy it. A question which has come up a few times in the last couple of weeks actually is what else is going on in my life? And that's an absolutely fair question. People want to know like what I'm doing apart from working with the client, apart from working on my own business, Cluster Consulting, and how I'm managing to have a life outside of work. And it's a very good question. So I'm going to split this down into what I'm reading, what I'm listening to, and what I'm watching, because those are really the main things I do. On top of that, I might go for a walk at least twice a day, so once over lunchtime, and to enforce me having a break. Whether I eat any food in that time is another question. And then once after work, and that forces me to get out before it gets dark. At least now the sun's staying up for later. That's a really good way of saying, oh, it's this time in the evening, whether that's like 5:30, 6:30, whatever it is. I must go out for a brief walk before it gets too dark. So firstly, what am I reading? So as a Christmas gift, I was given a Mr. B's Emporium. Never heard of them before, but they are amazing. A monthly subscription, so they will send me a book each month, and I have to fill in this like huge questionnaire about my reading habits, what I've read before, what I liked, what I didn't like, blah blah blah. And then they send me a book each month for 11 months because they're super hipster and they don't do 12-month subscriptions. And this month's book that I've only just started, even though we're midway through the month, is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. And to begin with, I thought that was about the UK, like a long way to a small angry country, but it's not. It's about kind of interplanetary travel and how that might work, and this great fiction story about that. And it's apparently the first in a series, and I'm about a quarter of the way through it right now, and I'm really enjoying it. Super good. I'll drop a link in the blog post if you happen to see that. There'll be a link in the description below, so you can get the Goodreads link if you're interested in that book. What am I listening to? So I mainly listen to podcasts as I go out for my lunchtime walk, usually with the dog. Two birds, one stone, all that stuff. And at the moment I'm listening to the Intelligence Squared podcast. I really enjoy the Intelligence Squared podcast for 3 reasons. Number 1, they are short enough to fit in the exact amount of time I have to go walk a couple of lengths around of the block, so that's good. Number 2, it's an interviewee type format / discussion. And number 3, it's like pre-vetted good content. So during lockdown, anybody can make a podcast. Like, look at me making this YouTube video. Anyone can make a YouTube video, but what I'm interested in is good content, and hopefully you think this is good content, but more than that, with a podcast specifically, because it's going like directly into my ears, and it's real prime time for me. I want to make sure that it's like pre-vetted good material, and therefore for me, Intelligence Squared has been the answer to that. What am I watching? So at the moment I'm watching on Netflix Snowpiercer. I'm pretty addicted to the weekly release schedule at the moment. It can feel a bit like cringy and like, oh, wait until you see what happens next week, and it's like, oh no. But overall, it's a kind of interesting story about life on a perpetual train because the whole world has become snowy, hence Snowpiercer. And how does life survive in that way? It's kind of interesting. Alright, so next week, what are the 3 things that I'm listing out that I'm excited for? Firstly, we have our first show and tell with a client. I'm super excited about this. It's going to be really interesting. Secondly, I'm going to review my Q1 personal and professional OKRs. I'm going to do that this weekend so that I can report back in a YouTube video. So make sure you're subscribed so you get access to that. And the third thing is I'm going to continue drafting my Cluster Consulting book, or my first book from Cluster Consulting. It's going to be really interesting. I can't say too much about it now because of all like IP stuff, but I will be sharing updates over on Twitter. So if you're interested in that, you should definitely follow. That's been the week. That's been what I'm interested in for next week. Hopefully that all makes sense. Hopefully this is useful to people. I'm always looking for feedback, so please let me know. And with that, have a lovely weekend. Thanks, bye.